The snow shovel vanished on the worst possible day. Karen Wilkinson stood at her front window, lips pressed into a thin line as she watched her neighbor, Jeff Miller, desperately trying to clear his driveway with what appeared to be a cookie sheet. Outside, the blizzard had dumped 18 inches overnight and the neighborhood was buried. School was canceled. Roads were impassable. And Karen's prized ergonomic snow shovel, the one with the comfortable grip and the perfect angle, was now in Jeff's garage. She knew this because she had taken it herself yesterday afternoon. "He doesn't deserve that shovel," Karen muttered, sipping her morning coffee. Not after what he did. What Jeff had done was park his work truck on the street overnight 3 weeks ago, a clear violation of Pinecrest Estates HOA Rule 17.3, which Karen had personally championed at last summer's board meeting. As the current vice president of the Pinecrest Estates Homeowners Association, Karen took rule violations personally, very personally. Karen's phone buzzed. It was Diane from across the street. "Are you seeing this?" Diane texted. "Poor Jeff is trying to shovel with a baking pan." Karen typed back, "Rules exist for a reason. Maybe next time he'll think before parking commercial vehicles on our streets." She set down her phone and watched Jeff's pathetic progress. At his current rate, he'd be free by springtime. The thought brought a small smile to her face. The HOA meeting was in 2 days, and she needed the board to back her proposal for stricter enforcement of lawn ornament regulations. Jeff, as the neighborhood's most vocal opponent to what he called her lawn police tactics, needed to be neutralized. Her phone rang. It was Martin Green, the HOA president. "Karen, did you take Jeff's snow shovel?" Martin's voice sounded tired, defeated. He'd been HOA president for 6 years, mostly because nobody else wanted the job. "I have no idea what you're talking about," Karen replied smoothly. "But while I have you, I've been meaning to discuss the Miller property. Have you seen those holiday lights still hanging from his gutters? It's February, for heaven's sake." "Jeff called me. He says his security camera caught someone who looks remarkably like you entering his garage yesterday. Says his snow shovel went missing after that." Karen felt her face grow warm. That's absurd. His camera must be not functioning. Probably improperly installed, another violation I should write up. "Karen," Martin sighed, "we've talked about this. You can't just take people's property because they break HOA rules." "I'm looking at my garage right now," Karen lied, turning away from the window. "No extra shovels here." After hanging up, Karen peeked outside again. Jeff had abandoned the cookie sheet and was now attempting to use a plastic lawn chair to push snow. It wasn't going well. Little did Karen know that Jeff Miller wasn't just any neighbor. Before moving to Pinecrest Estates, he had worked as an ice sculptor in Alaska. And as he struggled with the makeshift snow-clearing tools, a plan was forming in his mind. A plan involving the garden hose, cold temperatures, and an intimate knowledge of how to build structures out of frozen water. A plan that would make Karen Wilkinson regret ever messing with his snow shovel. By evening, Karen had almost forgotten about the snow shovel incident. She was busy preparing for tomorrow's virtual work presentation when her doorbell rang. Outside stood Martin Green, looking uncomfortable in his heavy winter coat, and beside him, Jeff Miller, whose nose and cheeks were bright red from hours in the cold. "Karen," Martin said wearily, "we need to talk about the shovel." Karen crossed her arms. "I already told you I don't have it." Jeff held up his phone. "I've got video that says otherwise. Timestamp 4:17 p.m. yesterday. Press play." The footage clearly showed Karen entering his garage through the side door, emerging moments later with his snow shovel, and walking quickly across the cul-de-sac toward her house. Karen's mind raced. That's not what it looks like," she stammered. "I was merely relocating it temporarily as a teaching moment about proper storage of outdoor equipment." "A teaching moment?" Jeff's laugh was hollow. "It took me 4 hours to clear enough snow to get my car out. My daughter missed her doctor's appointment." Martin rubbed his temples. "Just give him back the shovel, Karen." "Fine," Karen huffed. "Wait here." She disappeared into her garage, returning with the snow shovel. "I was going to return it tomorrow anyway, after the HOA meeting." Jeff took the shovel without thanks. As he turned to leave, he stopped. "You know, Karen, some of us are just trying to live our lives. Not everyone has time to memorize all 300 pages of the HOA handbook." "Rules exist for a reason," Karen replied icily. "Your truck was parked illegally. It was Christmas Eve. I had nowhere else to put it while unloading my daughter's presents." Karen waved dismissively. "Exceptions lead to chaos. Next thing you know, everyone will be parking work vehicles anywhere they please." After they left, Karen felt a twinge of something, not quite guilt, but annoyance that she'd been caught. She peered through her blinds, watching Jeff trudge back home through the snow. She got to be more careful next time. The following morning, Karen awoke to strange sounds outside, rhythmic scraping, and the occasional splash of water. Wrapping herself in her robe, she looked out her bedroom window and gasped. Jeff was in his front yard working with focused intensity. He had cleared a massive area of snow and was now spraying water from his garden hose into what appeared to be wooden frames. Beside him sat several large coolers, blocks of ice, and what looked like professional sculpting tools. Karen grabbed her phone and took photos. This was definitely against AHOA regulations, some kind of unauthorized lawn structure. She zoomed in as Jeff carefully positioned ice blocks in a curve that seemed to be pointing directly toward her house. She quickly pulled up the HOA handbook on her tablet and began furiously searching for relevant violations. Temporary structures? Yes. Unauthorized landscaping? Absolutely. Excessive use of water during winter months? She'd find something. By noon, Karen had composed a detailed email to the entire HOA board with her photos attached, demanding immediate action. She pressed send with satisfaction, then bundled up to go investigate closer. As she stepped outside, she found several neighbors had gathered across the street, watching Jeff work with expressions ranging from confusion to admiration. "What exactly is he doing?" Karen demanded of Diane, who was filming the proceedings on her phone. "He's building something amazing," Diane replied without looking away. "Did you know he used to compete in international ice sculpting championships? He's got photos inside his house from competitions in Norway, Japan, Canada." Karen felt her blood pressure rising. That's not the point. He's violating at least 7 different HOA codes. Diane finally turned to her. "You know, Karen, sometimes I think you forget that before you became vice president, the HOA was mostly about community barbecues and helping each other out." Karen opened her mouth to reply when her phone buzzed. It was an email response from Martin. "Emergency HOA meeting postponed due to road conditions. We'll address concerns next week." She looked up to see Jeff smiling at her from across the street, a knowing gleam in his eye as he carefully shaped what was becoming a massive, curving wall of ice, its trajectory now unmistakably aimed at her front yard. By late afternoon, Karen could no longer contain herself. Jeff's project had grown dramatically. What had started as a curved foundation was now clearly the beginning of a massive wall. The structure already stood 4 feet tall in some sections, with neighbors coming and going, bringing Jeff hot coffee and taking selfies with the emerging ice creation. Karen marched across the street, her boots crunching through snow that had been trampled by dozens of curious onlookers. She clutched her tablet displaying the relevant HOA regulations. "Jeff Miller," she called out. "This has to stop immediately." Jeff looked up from where he was carefully shaping a section of ice, his gloved hands steady despite the cold. "Hey, Karen," he replied cheerfully. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" "You know very well this violates AHOA Code 12.4 regarding temporary structures, as well as the aesthetic uniformity clause in Section 9, Karen said, her voice rising. "Not to mention the noise ordinance." Jeff set down his tools and straightened up. Several neighbors had paused to watch the confrontation, including Ted Harrison from down the block, who was filming with his phone. "Actually," Jeff said, "I checked the bylaws pretty carefully. Ice sculptures are not specifically prohibited anywhere in the HOA documentation. In fact, under Section 17.2, seasonal decorative elements are explicitly permitted between November and February." Karen's face flushed. "This is not a decoration. It's a structure. A wall." "It's art," Jeff corrected. "Temporary, seasonal art. And I've already gotten permission from the city for the water usage." Karen glanced around, noticing the growing number of spectators. "This wasn't going as planned. The HOA board will have something to say about this," she warned. "I'm sure they will," Jeff agreed. "But by then, it'll be complete, and then nature will take its course and it'll melt away. No harm done." Karen stepped closer, lowering her voice. "What exactly are you building, Jeff?" For the first time, Jeff's smile faltered slightly. "You'll see tomorrow. Consider it my response to your teaching moment with my shovel." As Karen turned to leave, she heard someone in the crowd whisper, "Team Jeff." Several people chuckled. Her cheeks burned as she walked back to her house, a sound of ice being chipped and shaped following her all the way. That evening, Karen called every AHOA board member individually. Most sent her to voicemail. Martin finally answered on her third attempt. "Karen, it's dinner time," he sighed. "Martin, we have a situation. Jeff Miller is building some sort of ice monstrosity, and it's clearly directed at me as revenge for, well, that's not important." "For taking his snow shovel," Martin finished. "Yes, I know. Everyone's talking about it on the neighborhood Facebook group." Karen felt her stomach drop. "What?" "Someone posted pictures. It's actually quite impressive. Did you know he won the silver medal at the Sapporo Ice Festival 5 years ago?" Karen gripped her phone tighter. "This isn't about his artistic credentials. It's about maintaining standards in our community." "Look," Martin said, "unless it's creating a safety hazard or permanently damaging property, there's not much we can do until it violates a clear rule. Is it blocking the sidewalk, extending into the street?" "No," Karen admitted. It's entirely on his property. What? Then I suggest you wait until our meeting next week. Who knows, it might all be melted by then. After hanging up, Karen poured herself a large glass of wine and logged onto the neighborhood Facebook group. There it was, multiple posts with photos showing Jeff's progress throughout the day. Worse, there was a post about her confrontation with him, with several unflattering comments about her power trip and vendetta against fun. Through her window, Karen could see floodlights illuminating Jeff's yard. He was still working, now assisted by several niggers. The wall had grown to at least 6 feet in some sections. As she watched, Karen noticed something else. The curve of the wall seemed to be forming some kind of parabola, with the focus point appearing to be her driveway. A slow realization dawned on her. Jeff wasn't just building a wall for spite. He was building it with a very specific purpose in mind. And judging by the weather forecast showing another week of below freezing temperatures, it wasn't going to melt anytime soon. Karen barely slept that night. She tossed and turned, plagued by visions of enormous ice structures and the smirking face of Jeff Miller. At 3 a.m., she finally gave up, wrapped herself in a heavy blanket, and sat by her living room window watching the floodlights in Jeff's yard. The man was still working, now joined by 2 others, college-age boys from the neighborhood who were clearly enjoying the late-night adventure. By sunrise, Karen had made a decision. If the HOA wouldn't help her, she'd take matters into her own hands. She brewed a strong pot of coffee, dressed in her warmest clothes, and walked across the street carrying 2 steaming mugs. Jeff looked surprised to see her. He was alone now, his young helpers having finally gone to bed. His face was red from cold and exertion, but his eyes showed a fierce determination. Peace offering. Karen held out one of the mugs. Jeff hesitated, then took it. Thanks. He sipped the coffee gratefully. Karen surveyed the structure. It was stunning if she was being honest with herself. The ice wall now curved in a perfect arc, standing nearly 10 feet high at its peak. The surface was remarkably smooth in some areas, textured with intricate patterns in others. The morning sun hitting it created prismatic rainbows across the snow. It's quite beautiful, she admitted reluctantly, but I need to understand what you're doing. Jeff studied her face as if assessing her sincerity. It's a parabolic reflector, he finally said. A what? A curved surface that concentrates reflected light, or in this case, sunlight, to a specific focal point. Jeff pointed to Karen's driveway. That focal point. Karen felt a chill that had nothing to do with the winter air. You're building a giant magnifying glass aimed at my house. Jeff took another sip of coffee. Not exactly. It won't get hot enough to cause any damage, but it will concentrate enough sunlight to melt snow very effectively in one specific area. Karen's mind raced. My driveway? Precisely. Jeff smiled. Every sunny day, while everyone else's snow slowly melts, yours will disappear much faster. I calculated the angles based on the winter sun position. Should work for at least the next month. Karen stared at him. You're building an enormous ice structure to help me melt snow on my driveway. Jeff's smile widened. Ironic, isn't it? You stole my snow shovel, so I'm giving you something better, a driveway that clears itself. Karen didn't know whether to laugh or be furious. That's brilliant? Over-engineered, petty? Jeff suggested. All of the above, Karen conceded. She circled the structure, noting the precision of its curve, the careful reinforcement at its base. This must have taken a lot of work. About as much work as it took me to clear my driveway with a cookie sheet, Jeff replied, a hint of the old grievance returning to his voice. Karen felt a flicker of shame. I may have overreacted about the truck. The admission felt strange on her lips. And I may have overreacted about the shovel, Jeff acknowledged. But I have to admit, once I started building, I couldn't stop. It's been years since I've worked on a project this size. The neighbors seem impressed, Karen said, recalling the Facebook posts. They've been great. Mrs. Chen brought hot soup. The Williams kids helped pack snow for the foundation. Jeff hesitated. You know, most people in this neighborhood just want to get along, Karen. The HOA rules matter, but so does community. Karen sipped her coffee, the warmth spreading through her chest. I suppose I've been a bit rigid lately. A bit, Jeff agreed with a smirk. The sun had risen higher now, its rays catching the ice wall and casting a concentrated beam of light exactly where Jeff had predicted, the center of Karen's driveway. Already, a small patch of snow was beginning to glisten with moisture. Well, I'll be damned, Karen murmured. It actually works. By mid-morning, word had spread about Jeff's Snow Melter 5000, as someone had dubbed it on Facebook. Neighbors streamed by to marvel at the construction and its effect. Karen's driveway now had a perfect circle of cleared pavement, while the surrounding areas remained blanketed in snow. For the first time in years, Karen found herself the beneficiary of neighborhood attention rather than its enforcer. People she barely spoke to stopped to chat about the ice wall and its clever design. Children asked if they could touch the melted spot on her driveway, as if it were magic. And standing among them, watching his creation work exactly as designed, Jeff caught Karen's eye and raised his coffee mug in a small toast. By the following day, Jeff's ice wall had become a local sensation. A reporter from the community newspaper came by to take photos, interviewing both Jeff and Karen about the unusual neighborhood attraction. Karen found herself unexpectedly sharing laughs with Jeff as they recounted their shovel dispute to the amused journalist. "So you buried the hatchet?" the reporter asked. "More like melted the ice," Jeff replied with a grin, and Karen surprised herself by laughing. After the reporter left, Karen watched as children from the neighborhood slid paper boats down the wet stream that now flowed from her driveway to the storm drain. The concentrated sunlight in it created a perfect melting spot that was now expanding across her property. "You know," Karen said, approaching Jeff as he made minor adjustments to his creation, "this doesn't change the fact that your Christmas lights are still up in February." Jeff raised an eyebrow. "And your garden gnome exceeds the permitted height by 3 inches. You measured my gnome? You counted my Christmas lights." They stared at each other for a moment before both broke into reluctant smiles. Martin Green trudged through the snow toward them, clipboard in hand. "Well, this is unexpected," he said, looking back and forth between Karen and Jeff standing together without visible animosity. "I came to assess the situation after getting 17 different messages from Karen yesterday." Karen felt her cheeks flush. "The situation has evolved." Martin examined the ice wall, now standing a full 15 feet high at its center, tapering down at the edges in a perfect parabolic curve. "I have to say, this is actually quite impressive." "Want to see how it works?" Jeff offered, pulling out a laser pointer. He aimed it at various points on the ice wall, showing how each beam reflected to the same spot on Karen's driveway. "Fascinating," Martin murmured, "and all because of a snow shovel." "It was never really about the shovel," Jeff admitted. "It was about being treated like a troublemaker for one parking violation during Christmas." Karen shifted uncomfortably. "And perhaps I was a bit overzealous in my enforcement." Martin looked at her in astonishment. "I'm sorry," did Karen Wilkinson just admit she might have been wrong about something? "Don't push it," Karen warned, but there was no real heat in her words. As they talked, a dark SUV pulled up to the curb. A tall woman in an expensive-looking coat stepped out, surveying the scene with obvious interest. "Excuse me," she called, walking toward them. "Is one of you the artist responsible for this extraordinary structure?" Jeff raised his hand somewhat sheepishly. "That would be me." The woman extended her hand. "Vanessa Kincaid, director of the Winter Arts Festival in Lake Harbor. One of your neighbors tagged us in some photos online." She gestured to the ice wall. "This is remarkable work, especially for a residential setting. Would you be interested in being a featured artist at our festival next month?" Jeff's eyes widened. "The Lake Harbor Festival? But that's one of the biggest winter arts events in the region." "Indeed," Vanessa nodded. "And we rarely see work of this caliber outside of professional circles. We provide transportation for you and cover accommodation for the weekend." As Jeff and Vanessa discussed details, Karen found herself experiencing an unfamiliar emotion, genuine happiness for her neighbor's success, untainted by thoughts of rule violations or property values. Later that afternoon, the postponed HOA meeting was held virtually. Karen had prepared a detailed presentation on lawn ornament regulations, complete with slideshows of violations throughout the neighborhood. But when Martin called on her to present, she hesitated. "Actually," Karen said slowly, "I'd like to propose something different. Instead of stricter enforcement, I think we should consider organizing a neighborhood winter festival. Jeff's ice wall has brought more community interaction than anything that HOA has done in years. Perhaps we could channel that energy into something positive." Silence filled the virtual meeting. Diane recovered first. "Karen, are you feeling all right?" "Perfectly fine," Karen replied crisply. "Just thinking that rules work better when people understand their purpose, and maybe some of our rules need reconsideration." "Who are you, and what have you done with Karen Wilkinson?" Martin asked, only half joking. Karen smiled tightly. "Consider it my own teaching moment." After the meeting, Karen walked outside to find Jeff adding finishing touches to the wall, intricate patterns that cast delicate shadows across the snow. "Congratulations on the festival invitation," she said. Jeff looked up, his expression thoughtful. "You know, I've been thinking about your idea for a neighborhood winter event. What if we expanded on it? I could teach an ice sculpting workshop for the kids."